Welcome back, guys. My name's Alex. That's Eileen. And you guys are watching Straight to the Chicane podcast. And this is a podcast strictly about Formula One, all the things that are happening throughout the weekends, all the gossip, all the drama. How are you? What's going on? How was your weekend? Did you enjoy the race?
So many questions.
I know.
I'm good. It was a good weekend.
Yeah?
A little boring.
The race?
A little boring, but very drama-filled.
Yeah. This weekend was the second race of a triple header.
Yes.
We're in Austria. It is a sprint weekend. Mm-hmm. So that means, like most things, it's one practice that they all got to get it all under their belt to get it ready to go, and then they go right into qualifying. And man, it was kind of a weird weekend. Leading up to the weekend, though, we should say, is we had a few driver announcements. We had Lance Stroll committing to a 2-year deal.
Was it 2 years? I thought it was just whenever he decides he doesn't want to race.
It's a 2-year deal as far as I saw. And correct me if I'm wrong. And I think it's the longest deal he's had.
I didn't even know he had a deal. I just assumed that he's just always signed with Aston Martin.
We also heard, Pierre Gasly?
Pierre Gasly, yes.
Signed again with Alpine.
Mm-hmm. Kind of surprised by that.
So we're starting to get a little bit more pieces into that puzzle of the drivers. Mm-hmm. You know, we still have an open seat at Alpine because we know that they're not going to go with Ocon. Ocon is done there.
Ocon is done. They're parting ways.
They are parting ways. They've already announced it. So, what other announcements did we have coming up into the weekend? I know I'm missing a couple of things. Lots
of rumors.
Yes.
I mean, the rumor mill is swirling. So obviously the biggest one is, what's going to happen with Carlos Sainz. We still don't know. I thought last weekend said, obviously he is ready to make a decision, but then this weekend he said, I'm not going to do it in the middle of a triple header. It just doesn't feel right. But we tend to get a lot of driver signings or just deals, and I would say Silverstone is typically when we start to hear some rumblings. So the big one, I think, is Daniel Ricciardo going to be dropped at Silverstone?
I think that's a hot topic. I think, luckily this weekend, he finished in the points. He had a pretty good weekend considering.
He did.
But I think his future is weighing, unfortunately. I think he's one of the ones that he's going to have to bring it on and just really be next level from the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Helmut
Marko was pretty vocal, basically saying they brought him in. He's an older driver. They expected him to perform really well coming into RB and potentially come back for the Red Bull seat.
And he hasn't really been able to perform.
And typically they would bring in a young driver. So, it wasn't confirmed or like, oh, we're doing this one way or the other. Potentially it's happening. But I know his engineer did say at the end of the race, great job, and next week we'll obviously, focus on what we can do. So it doesn't sound like he's going anywhere, but we've seen it before with that team, so.
I know, and look, Daniel is a very good face, a very good brand for Formula One. Even if he went somewhere else to IndyCar or NASCAR or whatever, I think he'd be a good brand no matter what, just because of the type of brand he has with his name and everything that he does. Right. I think he's got a lot to show the rest of the season before they can even give him another seat. As far as I'm concerned, as of right now, they probably would dump him.
I know.
If that's the Red Bull way, Another weird rumor fact, was it true, was Jos Verstappen was in a car, had a race seat over the week or the last weekend,
He was supposed to drive the RB8.
So the RB8 at a fan fest thing.
Yeah, this
coming weekend in Silverstone.
No, different festival. It's not at Silverstone. It was somewhere else.
Okay, and then
it's not Goodwood.
And Christian Horner pulled the plug and said, "You're not."
Allegedly.
Yeah.
But we have all seen that there's definitely some drama between Jos and Christian.
There was comments made, right? I think Christian had a comment if Toto wants a Verstappen, he can have Yost or something like that.
Yes, yeah, he did say that. That's, another thing going into. Obviously, the whole drama started because of Hornergate and all of that happened at the beginning of the year. And Jos obviously said, listen, the team is going to start to fall apart. His son needs to be prioritized. We're talking about Horner's personal life more than whatever. So there's definitely been a rift between the two of them, and Yas has been very vocal speaking to the media about Christian. And so there's some animosity there. I suggested maybe they should get in a boxing ring and just box each other. Who do you think would win?
Have Dana White from the UFC
Yeah.
arrange that fight?
I mean, we all know I think Yas would win. Seems a
Probably. He's a little bit more violent, probably.
Seems a little bit scrappier.
Yeah.
So
So that's kind of the gossip that was leading into the weekend. Am I missing anything else besides that?
I mean, the other two rumors, obviously, is Logan Sargent, we don't think is coming back to Formula One next year. It's not confirmed. I mean, I think James has been very vocal that they're trying to sign Carlos too. But he's potentially going to IndyCar.
I think Logan's career in F1 is done. Yeah, I think he needs to go to IndyCar or go to a different class.
He did out-qualify Albon in the sprint this weekend.
For the first time in his F1 career, second time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I mean, Williams was
they were pretty tough looking this week.
pretty bad this weekend. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that, and then allegedly the other piece is Ollie Behrman getting signed to Haas coming into Silverstone. So a lot of rumors, a lot of what ifs, a lot of potentially this is happening type of conversations. But we just had the two driver signings going into this weekend. So.
Yeah.
And Max, I mean, at Media Day was very vocal saying he's driving for Red Bull next year. And that's where
I don't see him going really anywhere anytime soon unless things really kind of hit the fan. I think if they stay kind of where they're at, I think he'll be a Red Bull driver.
Yeah.
I don't see anything changing. So yeah, the weekend, we only had one practice. There was some issues on practice. Wasn't there a red flag or something at the end of practice?
There was a red flag for like 32 seconds. It was because of Max.
Okay.
I think he like put it in the wrong gear or something, stalled it out. But he caused a red flag. They had to wheel him back, and then it was like 2 minutes later, he's back out on the track.
Yeah.
The meme was, call an ambulance.
But not for me.
But not for me.
Yeah. So. Yeah, not much to really talk about. I thought there was something else I think I'm missing, but...
I mean, I think everyone was like, oh man. I mean, we're so Mercedes out right now. But Mercedes was looking good. They were P1 and P2 and on the hards.
They did that early on, and it was still like that for most of practice.
For most of practice, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So people were excited. But then Max was like, just kidding, and was P1. So
yeah, Max looked really solid all weekend. Really had a dominant control, definitely over the sprint race. Most of the race, he had a really good dominant. It was like 8 seconds, 9 seconds ahead. Mm-hmm. There was some issues that caused him to not have that lead anymore, but it wasn't. He was pretty dominant the whole time, as far as I could tell. Mm-hmm. Seemed like Red Bull was back on track.
Red Bull. You seem like Max is just Max.
Yeah.
I don't want to clump
it's not
Red Bull.
Okay, you're right, because Sergio is struggling. Sergio has been struggling as of late. Although, from what I can tell, he took a lot of debris, and there was an issue with the car.
We had 2 races this weekend.
We did.
We had 2 qualifying sessions this weekend.
We did.
And he wasn't in the top 3 for either. And I think at one point he was down almost a second to Max.
He was at one point.
So, not really sure what's going on there. Now, I mean, talking about Sergio's weekend, yeah, he did have some damage. He was involved in a lap 1 little 3-way battle there. And yeah, I could see that causing some issues.
Yeah.
But definitely he's been off his form
since Monaco. Since
he re-signed with Red Bull. So, interestingly enough.
I just thought, because also interesting is Max has used more engine parts and more components than a lot of the other drivers. And I wonder if that's also for him too, or where he's maybe using less engine modes, less power, and that's why he's so far back.
I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
I don't know what's going on with him, but it's been a struggle. I think, he's only 6 points ahead of Russell in the championship now. And, Piastri's right behind him. It just feels like even from a qualifying perspective, we're just still not good. There was glimmers of hope, but it's still a really tough weekend for him.
Yeah, and this track is kind of weird because it's fast paced, fast corners, short lap, like a 1 minute lap, pretty much. And so to be like a second off on such a short lap is kind of weird. You know, it's like, hey, well, how much are you missing in certain turns? Because you're not hitting it right at all. You know, so I don't know. I think there was definitely something going on with Red Bull, and I mean, even Max was complaining of issues with tires and stuff like that throughout the race.
Yeah,
and stuff.
I don't know. I mean, I think Red Bull has been getting challenged, so are they just looking for an excuse to like?
I think a lot of the other teams have caught up.
They definitely have. There's definitely a lot more pressure, but it seems like almost every weekend it's like, oh, there's this. And sometimes I think Max just does it just to like give people hope. And then he's like, just kidding. And then he runs away with the race. So, because I think the last like 3 race weekends, granted we haven't done a podcast since I don't remember when, but Montreal, obviously Spain, you know, I think that he felt, oh, there's issues with these tires, or I'm sliding around, I'm having these issues, you know. So, but then he still is like putting in lap after lap where he's like building a second, 10-second, you know, gap. So I think Max is just inevitable. Like he's just so dominant, so comfortable that it's hard you can't say Red Bull, you have to say, you know, Max. And Sergio. Whereas you see other teams where they're, you know, McLaren is, the 2 cars are up there. Mercedes, I mean, with the exception of qualifying, I think that they're pretty close from a racecraft perspective. But
yeah, and they're slowly picking up. They've been coming on stronger every weekend, it seems like.
Well, they've been on the podium the last 3 races, which is, I mean, listen, this is exciting for Mercedes. It's a glimmer. So I think going into this race, it was like, you know, okay, we're really building some momentum. Lewis was on the podium in Spain. George was on the podium in Canada. And so, you know, they were really feeling like, okay, we're in the mix. So
yeah, I mean, George could have won Canada if he played all of his cards right.
Yeah.
He was in the mix.
Yeah.
I mean, look, and this weekend was kind of boring. Sprint race was almost a snooze fest.
It was. We had the little battle.
At first.
We had a couple laps, and then that was pretty much it. Everything kind of settled down.
Yep.
So.
And then it was just Max for the win. And that was, I think his 10th or 11th win in the sprint races. I don't know. And we've only been doing sprint races for now. This is, the 3rd season?
I honestly don't even care. I'm like, is it
4th season?
It is what it is. I think it's 3.
Yeah, I think it's the 3rd season.
Yeah.
Him. And so he's won majority of them. The only other ones that have won is like, the next closest person is like Valtteri Bottas with like 2.
Yeah.
So
he's won more sprint races by himself than the rest of the grid combined.
Yes.
So that's where we're at with that. So
yeah, you know, so I don't know. These sprint races are kind of shaping up to be kind of weird, and I don't know if it's just because of the particular track. Like we've seen some good sprint races.
We have, yeah. I mean, I think that there's been some. I think at the end of the day, they're not taking as many risks. So from a overtake or like a battling perspective, we're really not going to get much of that. So you definitely saw during the sprint race, a lot of the drivers were like 1 second. It was like 1 second, 2 seconds between each person, with the exception of those few laps where Lando did overtake Max to get immediately overtaken, and then Oscar overtake Lando. So that was pretty much all we had. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was obviously some overtakes in the back, but nothing really from a points perspective, and really didn't make it very exciting. So, you know, it was like super early for us.
Yeah, it was like a 6 a.m.
6
here on the
a.m. start
Eastern.
time.
Yeah.
Woke up, formation lap. We had a double formation lap.
Yeah, so that was weird because they canceled it, and it seemed kind of weird this weekend with the lights. You even mentioned it. And they canceled the thing and they made them go around again. So it was one less lap already again then. And do we know why? Did they ever say why?
I don't know. I think something happened. There was like a photographer that was like in the wrong spot or something.
You know, the announcer said it was something like that. Like then there was photographers in
like turn 1, I think.
Yeah,
so
turn
it was
1
like,
not in the right spot for if they needed to go straight. Yeah, so safety.
But still, that happened, and then during the main race,
it was held pretty long.
It was like normally you get to the 5 lights and it immediately goes out. It was like 5 lights and then it was like holding, and
Yeah.
I'm like, what's going on?
And the thing is it's always random. So it could go out immediately. It could go for a little while and then go out, right? It did seem like it was quite long because even the camera operator that was tasked to have that shot, he kept zooming in, slow zoom, and then typically what would happen is he would zoom, and then as he's zooming, the lights would go out, right? And so it's a nice, smooth shot. But what happened was he kept zooming in, then he had to stop and hold it on the lights because it did take so long.
Right.
You know, and so, yeah, that was a weird. And then...
It's almost like every time Crofty's not there, something gets messed up.
Yeah, but in the race, Max got away super clean and got away and was like first lap, a second ahead. And for the most 60 laps, that's kind of what it was.
Yeah, I think there was a lot that happened, but just nothing at the front.
Yeah, honestly, the big stuff that was happening, the best stuff that was happening was between Pierre and Ocon. It was a battle between those two. They were shifting sides, changing paces, and they were trying to get ahead of Alonso. And that was most of the race, was highlighting those two.
There always seems to be something at Alpine.
And I would say for the last 5 races, Alpine's been battling each other.
There's been a lot of drama going on at Alpine.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, they really tried this like all French lineup, French team. We're gonna get along. They grew up together type of mentality, but everybody knew that there was drama between the two of them, and they have proved nothing. But there is feistiness. They are scrappy, and Ocon is like not one to back down. We saw this with Alonso, and I mean, they're going wheel to wheel, like not even in the points.
Yeah. And they've been battling like that a lot, not in the points, but you know.
I mean, there's a lot of teammates that are battling each other, I would say. The other second closest would be it's Lewis and George are always battling each other. We saw that on track. Lewis overtook George after he overtook Carlos, which is a whole nother story.
We'll get to that, don't worry.
Okay. Go ahead.
Let's talk about Ferrari. Let's talk about Lewis, or Charles, and Carlos. This last 2 weekends, they've been pretty bad.
Sure.
They've had no luck or something. I mean...
Carlos was on the podium, so I don't know.
I'm talking about Leclerc particularly.
Okay. So since Monaco, Leclerc has been back to the Leclerc curse.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it's just him with the upgrades or what. I don't know what the issue is.
I don't know.
You don't know?
I'm not sure. It's the heavens saying that there can't be any type of championship contention between. I mean, it was looking like it was going to be a great battle between the top two, and then all of a sudden, he's out of the mix completely. Engine failure, not his fault.
Yeah.
I mean, gets hit by somebody on the opening lap of this race, has to pit. P19 coming out in last place.
Gets lapped again, 2 races in a row.
Yeah, and then his engineer gives him the hope of, listen, we're going to end in the points. And he did end just outside P11. But it just seems to be nothing but problems. He had a really bad qualifying. He couldn't go back out. You know, obviously he was stuck in the pit lane. The car turned off. Tried to get back out. Barely didn't make it to the line. Then in SQ qualifying, he drove off the track.
Yeah.
Completely damaged the car. The car, he pretty much said, was broken. So a little bit of driver, a little bit of bad luck, a little bit of team. So hopefully we see a whole new Charles come Silverstone.
I think we need to. I think Ferrari's going to have to do something because they had a really good momentum going. And then all of a sudden it's just like you're right. Carlos was in the podium.
He was in the mix. I mean,
he was in the mix, but he hasn't been fighting for the podium. He hasn't been fighting for the top spot yet.
Yeah, I think
where Charles was for a moment and won Monaco. So
Carlos won in Australia too.
Yeah. But that was early
Ferrari
on. That was what, race 2, race 3?
Ferrari is still P2 in the Constructors' Championship, so it's not like they're completely out of the realm.
No, but another weekend like this, where one isn't out of the points, one is in, it just brings those other teams more.
Well, I don't think he can help it that a car drove into his wing.
Well, it seems like we have that a lot lately.
Yeah, when you're a competitive driver and you're stuck in that middle area, you are almost always going to get, I feel like, in some type of situation because you've got really like excited drivers that are like, I'm close to the points in the back. They want to have a great start, but you also have really competitive cars. We had a McLaren, a Ferrari, and a Red Bull that came together on the opening lap.
Yeah.
Oscar made it out scot-free with no damage. Sergio had a hole in the side of his car, and Leclerc lost his front wing. So, I mean, and then they put him on a tire. I mean, he pit 3 times. So,
yeah,
it was one of those weekends to forget for him. So, but I mean, I think there's still hope. Am I delusional? I think there's still hope for Ferrari. I mean, I think they said, excuse me, the upgrades helped them with their downforce, but they've been having some porpoising issues. So
yeah, I don't know. We'll see, because Silverstone's a different high-speed type of track than where we were just at here, where I hope there's a difference.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we also have to remember too, and obviously we're talking about this race, but we have to remember we're coming off a weekend where those two like almost got into an accident, and did Carlos ruin Charles's race? There was some drama after. There was heated moments and conversations. So, there's a lot of tension in a lot of these teams going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, tension. I mean, look, the championship is still up for the grabs.
Yeah.
Max is kind of running away with it with like 60 or 70 points lead.
Yeah, I don't know how many.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
70 something.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the ballpark, but by no means is he completely out, because he could have just as easily this weekend. I mean, look, he was in the lead. Him and Lando hit each other. He got a flat tire, was still able to pit and finish 5th.
With a 10-second penalty.
With a 10-second penalty. I mean, that's how far the lead he still is. He's still got a fast car. And he still was able to get points, even though it was a catastrophic failure on his part, on his team, or his part, really. Mm-hmm. So still able to scrounge up points, still able to stay within the mix, still beat his teammate.
Yeah, I think that was the big thing.
And that's huge, because no matter what, he's still gaining points. Mm-hmm. It's like if he would have been kicked out, kind of like now Lando was Lando is in 2nd place for the championship for the drivers, right?
Right.
So now he didn't get no points. Now, so that just separates that even more. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I
mean, both of their races were ruined this weekend, but definitely Max came out on the positive side of it, because he was able to secure points.
So I'm kind of
and still build a championship lead.
Yeah, I'm curious on how you guys feel about this, because it's been a heated topic on Twitter, on all the social media since it happened.
Yes.
What is your take?
The community is fuming.
What is your take on what happened with the aggressive behavior from Lando on needing to get the pass, because he had the faster car at the time?
But did he really? Everyone keeps saying that. Lando has the faster car.
I think he had the faster car at the time, because he also had access to DRS.
Max didn't have a fast car this weekend or whatever. It's like, I think Max's car was, Max out-qualified everybody by half a second this weekend.
He did. He had the fastest
So
single
to
lap.
say that Lando had the fastest car, I don't think he had the fastest car. I think, number one, Lando was in the mix because Max had a bad pit stop.
A really bad pit stop.
Which, very unusual for Red Bull.
I mean, not terrible. I mean, Valtteri Bottas's pit stop from Mercedes was the worst of all time.
Yeah. I mean, of course.
And then the one that happened last year or this year with him was the second worst.
Yeah.
But pretty bad on Red Bull.
Anytime that Max has a bad pit stop,
he gets frustrated.
He's pissed off. He's
aggressive.
On the radio, pissed off. GP even said something to him like, because he goes, ha, great, and so he's coming out of the pits. Lando's right behind him. And essentially, the reason that he was held up is because Lando was coming
just
into
far
the pits.
enough back that it held up him.
And he was already under investigation for the previous pit stop for that release. So it brought them together. They were super close coming out. And so obviously it brought Lando back into the mix.
I think the help with DRS, that's the benefit of the DRS, is that I don't think Lando's car was the fastest car either. Obviously, if it was the fastest car, he would have been on pole, you know? But I think his car was fast enough, especially with DRS, and I think with the tire issues that it seemed like Max was having, it was just all bound to happen. But Max being Max, the super aggressive, and you kept hearing Lando say he's making double moves, he's moving under braking, he's doing, you know what I mean?
I think too, like,
but he's always done that.
We saw Lando try the move on Max in the sprint race, the same thing, like same area, and Max immediately overtook him. So it's like, why was he so aggressive to like block him going into the same turn when the same thing happened yesterday? Like, because he was struggling too on his tires, he wasn't happy, and at the end of the day, he was making defensive moves. Depends on who you talk to. Was it right? Was it okay? Lando's coming on the radio. He's saying stuff. Max overtook, off the track, Lando, and he's like, he needs to give that back.
He immediately gave it.
Lando overtook Max off the track. He needs to give that back. He gives it back. Guess who doesn't give the position back and did the same move in the same corner?
Max.
They keep going. They go to the next one, and Lando's like, I gotta go for it. We've seen plenty of drivers dive bomb down the corner, specifically also Max Verstappen.
But Max ended up getting a penalty for that, right? For not giving it back?
No.
Did they get investigated for not giving it back?
I don't think that there was time. So at the same time, it
Yeah,
was like
I know.
everything was happening at the same time. Lando's under investigation he's got a black and white flag for track limits.
Yeah.
And so as soon as they're coming into this where the incident happened, he gets a 5-second penalty. There's not even time to tell probably Lando, hey, you've got a 5-second penalty. I mean, keep in mind, it's like a minute around the freaking lap. So by the time they're getting the orders and then they're relaying it to him, they've got to choose the time that they're doing it. They can't just yell into the radio.
It's gotta be on the straights, usually.
So he comes in, he goes for it on the outside. Don't tell me Max didn't know that he was there. The amount of people that are trying to say that Max had no idea that Lando was there is unreal. Alex Brundle.
Yeah. No, Max knew exactly where he was.
And you
saw the double move because he even pushed it out wide too to make the turn to right into him.
Right.
And he was expecting Lando to back out of it.
Right. Yeah.
And Lando wasn't going to back out.
Yeah.
And hence, both rear tires pretty much hit. Max's tire deflates probably the best way for him is it inflates inside and just kind of the carcass stays on the rim. Mm-hmm. Where then...
And then he bumped his front tire, Lando's front tire.
Yep.
After they went a little crazy. And I don't know how nobody else noticed it. I mean, we noticed it right away. We were like, oh my God, he's got a puncture. Then they both had punctures. And then they're still trying to race, going down the straight. And Max runs him off the track with two damaged cars into the grass. It's like, okay, what's going on? But, I mean, I think it was bound to happen. I've been waiting for this to happen.
I mean, it was bound to happen just like 2021 Lewis and Max was bound to happen.
No.
It was all kosher.
The tension was way different then.
Well, way different then, but it was just a matter of time on both situations.
I'll tell you what, there's one thing that I will say is I have been saying Lando needs to be more aggressive for probably the last year because even in US, when we were in COTA, it was like Lando started on pole.
Yep.
And it was like, it just always feels like Lando, from a defensive point, he was backing down to Max. And that, I think that's what Max is used to is, okay, they're gonna back down, or I'm in the front, or basically respect me and don't try me type of thing. And Lando went for it because he's like, listen, this is my only opportunity. Plus, he was probably pissed off because he's like, dude, the last lap, he overtook me and he needed to give it back, and he didn't.
And then the lap or two laps before that, I made the pass.
And I'm going to fully send it. Yeah. So it's like.
And look, Lando is also a new race winner, so he knows what it feels like to win. Mm-hmm. He probably wants that feeling again. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he's going for it.
He knows he's got a good car.
They got a good car this year, McLaren. I mean, his teammates right there in the mix as well. Just any time now, his teammate could absolutely win a race, just as well as Lando has and will. So yeah, they're a team to be watching out for, and as long as Sergio and Max are this far apart, all these other two teams are gonna.
I'll tell you what, Red Bull can't continue to Max number one. I mean, he's carrying the team.
Yeah, but he can't carry the team by himself.
He can't do it by himself. I mean, there's other teams McLaren is steady on the charge. Ferrari's still up there. I mean, they have 2 race wins.
Yeah.
And so, at the end of the day, there's a lot to be said. We're literally coming up on the halfway point.
I can't believe it's already almost halfway, too.
I know it is pretty crazy, but
it started off slow and a lot of races ahead, and then all of a sudden it's summertime and we're close to a summer break.
And everybody's like, "Oh my God, Formula One is back." We've got, obviously, had 4 different teams, obviously on pole position, 4 different race team constructor wins. So, I mean, it is pretty exciting. I still think Max is the dominant one.
And you're right, because it's a double-edged sword. Because it is nice to see 4 different teams in the mix. However, having 4 different teams in the mix right now means there's less points going around for a single competitor that could go against Max. Mm-hmm. Because Max was very dominant in the first early on, right? The first few races. I know him and Charles Leclerc were kind of going back and forth a little bit on some wins. But Max kept getting either first or second.
Yeah.
First or second. First or second. And then lately, it's been first, right?
I mean, going into this weekend, Lando was the only driver that scored points at every single race.
Right. Until this weekend.
I mean, McLaren still has, they've had a driver P2 pretty much the last, so many races in a row. And, kind of speaking to that, it's I would say McLaren probably has the most consistent form of 2 drivers currently. And do they need to start prioritizing Lando? I mean, I think Lando is obviously close at being in P2, but he's still far off. So from a driver's...
But this weekend, Oscar Piastri finished P2. And
he did.
Was able to get the points, and now he's even closer to probably Lando too. So it's even a harder question to ask now is, who do you, and I think that team is still up in the air on who you prioritize. They're both too good right now.
Yeah.
I can see other teams already picking their guy, and that's just the way it is. But I think McLaren's still in a little bit of a flux with.
Yeah, I think that Lando's a lot closer. So if I had to choose, but it's still now he's over 70 points behind. Yeah. So it's how can you do that? How can you ask somebody to sacrifice their race potentially? Yeah, so
you can't.
You really can't.
So I hope we just see more in the mix, and I hope we see more being in the mix and Max being lower on the totem pole. That's the only thing that's going to
I'm ready to see some more battles. Now, I think this weekend has definitely sparked a lot of controversy. There's been we've seen it in the past. I mean, it obviously sparked up a lot of comments and controversy tying back to 2021, bringing in the conversation from McLaren's team boss about Max's behavior and the way he, drives on track.
Well, a lot of people defended Max back in the day.
A lot of people and here's the thing. Here's the thing I think is the root thing right now, and what it was back in 2021 is 2021, we were coming off of 8 consecutive Mercedes Constructors Championships.
Yeah. 6, 7 wins.
Lewis winning, 6 championships with them. And people were like, I'm ready to see somebody different. Okay?
Yep. I mean, I kind of felt like that. I don't disagree.
People were ready. They wanted to fight for this underdog, this kid. He's got this potential. It is what it is. Because when we look at the conversation and how things have happened with this weekend versus 2021, there's a much different conversation happening. It's hard racing. It's this, it's that. Now there's a lot more conversation flowing around for Lando. And we know, based on driver of the day, that Lando is the most popular driver pretty much in F1.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that. You guys got to stop that.
But hold on, I want to make this point. So everyone was ready to have a new championship contender in 2021, okay? Very controversial. Probably the most controversial thing maybe since Felipe Massa and Lewis.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, Max was so dominant last season, coming into this season, looking dominant again. Just how do we stop him? And now there is a little bit of battling happening.
Yeah,
and so it's like, is Max now becoming the black sheep that we're sick of seeing winning? And granted, I want to see some battles. I want to see something happening. But the way that the fans are reacting is a little bit chaotic. But I do think that, you look back at some of the previous Max stuff, and I think a lot of announcers have said that, is Max has matured a lot over the last couple of years.
For sure.
2021, he was hungry to be a champion, so he was balls to the wall, like ready to go. I'm not backing down type of behavior. I think we saw a little bit of that. I think he's been getting a little bit rattled. He's been getting a little bit challenged, and
he still wants to win, though.
He still wants to win. He doesn't care. I'm going to do what I need to do, and sometimes you're going to crash. It is what it is. So
I think he's just a more aggressive driver than the rest of the 20 drivers or the 19 drivers.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's up to these drivers to not condone what he's doing, though, because before they were kind of condoning what he was doing. They were okay with it. They were friends. Oh, it's against Lewis. Let him battle it out. But some of us were like, he's still the rule is you can when you're going against someone, you can make your move. Usually the driver in front gets to make the move first to do the blocking. And once that happens, that's your one move. You can't go and do another move back. Okay, so as the backup person's coming up to pass, the front driver makes the move. That gives the back driver to either...
You get one move.
You get one move. That's all you get.
You get one move.
but a lot and constantly, and it's happened since before 2021, is Max does these two moves. So he does the first move to block, and then in the braking zone, he'll slightly push in on you. Whether you're on the inside or the outside, it doesn't matter. He'll push in on you. And he kept doing it. Lando called him out on it.
He said he didn't do it.
When they hit each other, it clearly happened.
Yeah, and also, the rule is that you need to leave like a car's width.
Yeah, but that's all. Yeah, he didn't, but that's always a judgment call. And the weekend before, Lando didn't leave a car's width for Max, and Max hit the dirt on the start, remember?
Yeah, but everything was okay because they didn't hit each other. Nothing happened. Max won the race. It probably would have been different if there was a different story. So
maybe.
It is what it is, but like that's the thing even about this weekend is like, Lando's like, oh my God, I expected fair racing, I expected hard racing, I expected this, I didn't expect Max to do that. Like, you've never seen the way he drives, you've never seen his defensive driving, and they're buds, So it's like, of course, when there was this huge battle going on, Lando wasn't in the mix when it was Lewis and Max versus each other.
He wasn't.
And they're mates, and it's like, okay, like we want to see somebody different. This is amazing. This is great racing. But when it's happening to you, it's a different story. And I think coming to the conversation of Lando is by far like the most popular driver. He's voted driver of the day, this weekend, last weekend. I just give him the award the rest of the year, essentially, at this point.
I don't think that's right. I don't like that. I think there has to be more going into it.
It's definitely a popularity contest at this point.
It is, and it's fan voting. So what do you expect? And
not to knock Lando. Listen, like there's been many times that I think we've voted for Lando from a driver of the day perspective. But like, first of all, obviously, I voted for driver of the day prior to the accident.
Yeah,
and the vote closes X amount of time, but it's like, how is he winning every single weekend? And then it just kind of sparks now it's like this witch hunt for like Max. It's always this witch hunt for like drivers And you can't even say your own opinion. And I hope I don't get heat for that because obviously we're sharing our opinions too. But it's like you can't even share your own opinion on something that you're passionate about because somebody else has, a different feeling, or it's just, now it's Max versus Lando fans. And they're probably sitting back, have already talked about it, and are fine going into another race weekend. Like the fact that we're bringing so much about their personal relationship into they're not going to be friends again after this one accident is so ludicrous. Like, first of all, they're millionaires, they're professional drivers. They're probably going to go into this weekend, with a little bit of frustration for each other, but I'm sure they're already going to have talked it out. Media day at Silverstone is going to be all questions about it.
Yeah, the media likes to boost and flabbergast. I mean, look at after the race, they were both asked questions from different reporters, and the way you see the camera is you only see one camera on one person, one camera on the other person, and you would think that they were talking about each other, but you would think they wouldn't even be around each other, yet they're as close as you and I.
You're literally next to each other.
Literally this close, having different conversations with different media outlets, talking about each other.
Yeah.
And Max is like, oh, it is what it is. Hopefully we'll deal with it. And
Lando's like, oh, he needs to apologize.
He needs to come to me. Well, he's already right here. So.
Right, exactly. So I'm like, did he say that so he could hear him say that so that after he would talk to him?
Probably.
Who knows? I mean, it's like, listen, everyone's going to be in the heat of the moment, frustrated with the situation. Lando didn't finish the race. His car is destroyed. Like, it literally
He also played his own part in helping to destroy his own car, too. Instead, he could have
just caused a red flag.
He could have caused a red flag. He could have just pulled the car over and saved all that damage.
And then he could have made it really spicy because then
Yes.
Oscar could have potentially won.
Because look how much damage. You saw the replay, right? In slow motion with all that tire tread.
So many cars picked up damage from Lando's debris.
It was tons of cars.
Lewis picked up more damage.
There was a hole in his ball that big, I think.
I mean, it's just, I think somebody else picked up damage. So it's, I think, Ricardo actually, but just a mess. I mean, no matter how you spin it, it was eventually going to happen.
Yeah.
I think that the Red Bull camp definitely was like really trying to spin the fact that Lando shouldn't have been dive bombing. They came on the radio at the end of the race like, oh, he's in the wrong. This penalty's ridiculous. I think that, they both played a part in it, but the majority of the fault was definitely to Max.
Well, I 100% agree. I think Max was at fault the whole entire time because there's no other way to pass. This is such a short racetrack. The fact that Lando was even making attempts to make some passes there was the only thing to do. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to win just as much as Max.
He did it in the sprint, and Max overtook him again immediately right after. So
because after turn one, you have DRS again. And so Max played it cool by braking early into turn two to get that DRS checkpoint, and then when they did the turn, Max had the DRS. Hey, bud, you over here now? And then, so I think that last time that dive bomb was into coming in into turn three,
right?
Which there's no DRS coming out of turn three. So I think it's just, oh, I know you miss us. I
think, irregardless, crazy. I mean, I think everyone has their own opinion on what happened with them, and it is what it is. It made for an exciting end to the race. It definitely sparked up a little bit of, oh my God, let's wake up. If you were sleeping, then obviously that got you going again.
Yeah. So. I mean, overall, the whole weekend could go down to the last 10, 11 laps.
I've just never really been a fan of this track, and I think, the one thing, like we talked about last year, so track limits last year, we had 75 violations or something, track limits. So
and they tried to do something about the track limits. They added the strip of the
They tried to fix it. They added the gravel. We only saw one person have their time deleted, which was Oscar. And
that was big because he was on his last lap in Q3.
Yeah. And he was
cooking. He was doing some cooking.
Well, he was in the top 3.
And he kind of overblew it and overshot it out of turn 4 into that zone there and took some gravel.
Seems to always happen to him. They're like going to like the post qualifying interviews and they're like, just kidding. Oscar's time is deleted.
Yeah.
Promoting George Russell.
Yeah. And look, good for George Russell. He had a solid race, stayed in the mix the whole entire time, and benefited from the chaos. right? And that's kind of what you need to do. If you want to get those points, you need to be somewhere in that mix, right? Because look, even Haas had an okay weekend. There were some drivers that had an
Haas
okay.
had a great weekend.
Yeah, and and so look, that there was all kinds of things that were happening behind the front because it was a fairly boring race. It was all right. This is what can we see and compared to the last 10 laps.
Right.
That's all you need to watch.
Yeah. No, I know.
So hopefully Silverstone next weekend.
Silverstone always delivers. It's going to be a great weekend.
It's going to be a great weekend. I think we're getting close to the end here. I want to know what you guys thought. I want to know what you guys think of the Max Verstappen, Lando Norris collision. How much was Max at fault? Was he or wasn't he? That's up to you guys. I'm kind of curious to see. He did get a 10-second penalty for causing a crash, causing an incident. He was able to serve it, or they added on to the end of his race. He still finished 5th. So look, he's still there. He's still a top driver in the Drivers' Championships.
He's still the top driver.
Yeah. So I don't think anything's changing too much yet. Things need to start getting tightened up here over the next little bit.
I think there's a lot of excitement going into this race weekend. I think there's potential more driver moves. There's a lot of speculation around things. So hopefully there'll be some announcements, coming off this weekend, and then Mercedes, obviously, we wore our Mercedes gear because this is their first win since 2022. George Russell's second win. He always wins when Max crashes into a driver that's in contention to win.
Yep.
He's there to pick up the pieces, and, I think he drove a solid weekend this weekend. Good qualifying. Stayed kind of just, quiet. Didn't make any mistake. Didn't even make a mistake when Toto came on the radio yelling at him when he was breaking into turn 3.
Yeah, he's like, let me do it. Yeah, let me drive. And I mean, even Lewis was able to stay in the mix, finish 4th. The Mercedes car is looking better than what it was the last 2 years. Absolutely. It's still maybe not to be the fastest car, but it's staying in the mix. And I am a true believer in consistency, right? And if you can stay in the mix, you can kind of get those points here and there when other cars make mistakes. In previous years, there was a lot more cars blowing up, cars catching fire, engine failure. So when you could be consistent, that's what mattered most. I could tell you Lewis Hamilton probably won 1 or 2 of his championships because of how consistent he and that car was, right? So consistency helps, and I think those two guys, I think Mercedes is in that mix. They've always been in that little area where they could pick up some points. So now they're a better car. We'll see what happens. It's turning up to be a really good season.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm looking forward, and I feel like Silverstone always, like I said, delivers a good race. So.
Yep. So right now we're back to back, ready for another race weekend. That's all I got. I don't know if you got anything else for us.
I could go on for days, but we'll cut it at that.
Yeah. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the race. We want to know what you guys thought. If not, enjoy Silverstone. And we'll see you guys next time. See ya.